Professor Daniel Mashau, Executive Dean, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment. Professor Trynos Gumbo, our inductee today. Professor Manfred Schrank, who's joining us online, Director of Real Cooperation in Vienna, Austria. Senior leaders of the university, members of Senate and other academics present, distinguished guests, Prof Gumbo's family. I understand his wife is here. You are most welcome to the University of Johannesburg. All of you who are joining us online this evening, Sanbonani, Huyenant, good evening, Tobel. It is indeed a great honor and a special privilege for me to welcome you to the Professorial Inauguration lecture of Professor Trynos Gumbo. As I do so, I wish to express a warm welcome to his loved ones, special guests, and colleagues. This is indeed a proud and joyful, yet landmark moment for all of you. For you, Professor Gumbo, for us here at UJ, for higher education in South Africa and beyond. The inauguration of professors is a public ceremony in which newly appointed professors are inducted into office by the Vice Chancellor and deliver their inaugural addresses. The ceremony has its roots in medieval university and serves a multiple of purposes. First is an expression of welcome and an entry for new professors joining the circle of colleagues who are already professors. Secondly, it provides a platform for professors to display their expertise in the discipline and showcase their research. In colonial traditions subscribed to by many universities, assuming the role of the professor refers to the gown and the cap. Once we have listened to the inaugural address, the gown, denoting the professorship, will be formally assumed. Today we gather to witness Professor Gumbo's entry into the illustrious community of scholars at our university. It celebrates his contributions to the discipline and ultimately his impact on society. Professors provide a university with its identity, character, academic legitimacy, and integrity. The inaugural lecture is a rite of passage following the confirmation of the appointment of a person. By this I mean that the power of the inaugural address is when the expertise is showcased beyond the corridors of the university and reverberates across society. It stands out as a moment of pride for the incumbent, the family, fellow scholars, the university, and ultimately society. In the past, several philosophers and scholars have defined universities using very narrow conceptualizations. For example, the search for truth, for universal knowledge, and even as instruments serving the purpose of the economy or being utilitarian in nature. Through our work and research at UJ, I hope that we can break out of these narrow conceptualizations and reflect on the university as contributing to the public good, working towards societal impact. What is the role then of the intellectual? Edward Said, in one of his articles, defines the role of the intellectual as follows: one who commands a vast knowledge of a specific discipline, one who is rigorous in the analysis of literature, one who views being an intellectual as a vocation, and who functions as a kind of public memory to recall what is forgotten or ignored, to make the connections that are otherwise hidden, and to provide alternatives for mistaken policies. So it is indeed a noble vocation. It remains then for us as a university with a Pan-African vision to derive our mandate as intellectuals and professors. And importantly, how do we embrace the role of a professor as a disruptor while continuing to be flagship careers of our disciplines? This evening we will listen to Professor Trynos Gumbo as one further step in the journey of being a professor. This is a journey which does not conclude once this lecture has been given. Notwithstanding, this inaugural lecture does create an opportunity for self-reflective pause in the journey of the professor. Ladies and gentlemen, it now gives me a great pleasure to invite the Executive Dean, Professor Daniel Mashau, to introduce Professor Trynos Gumbo to you. I thank you.
It's indeed my pleasure this evening for me to introduce to you Professor Trynos Gumbo, who is a member of the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment at the University of Johannesburg. Professor Trynos Gumbo is a professor of Sustainable and Smart Cities and Regions. He holds a C2 National Research Foundation NRF rating, which signifies international research standing and repute. He is registered as a professional planner by the South African Council of Planners, SECPlan, a regulatory body of planners and planning schools in South Africa. He is also registered as a corporate member of the South African Planning Institute, SAPI, and the Zimbabwe Institute of Rural and Urban Planners, ZIRUP. Prof Gumbo holds a Bachelor of Science honors and a Master of Science degrees in Rural and Urban Planning from the University of Zimbabwe. He completed his PhD from Stellenbosch University. He recently completed a postgraduate diploma in higher education at Rhodes University. He has also completed professional development courses on managing and leading people. Prof Gumbo worked as a graduate teaching assistant at the University of Zimbabwe in 2004. He joined the University of Zimbabwe, the National University of Science and Technology in Bulawayo, as a lecturer and later as a departmental chairperson in 2006. In 2008, Prof Gumbo joined the Ethiopian Civil Service University College in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, as a lecturer. After securing a Carnegie Foundation scholarship, he joined Stellenbosch University to pursue his doctoral studies. In 2014, he joined the Urban and Regional Planning Department at the University of Johannesburg as a senior lecturer. In 2016, he was appointed head of department, a position he held until December 2022. In 2018, Prof Gumbo was promoted to the position of associate professor until in October 2022, when he was promoted to full professor position. Professor Gumbo applies innovative methods in facilitating teaching, learning, and assessment of several modules at both undergraduate and postgraduate levels. As head of department, Prof Gumbo successfully transformed the programs, and he received 2 full accreditations in 2018 and 2021 from the South African Council for Planners. He spearheaded the development and successful commencement of a flagship interdisciplinary master's program in sustainable urban planning and development, where 6 faculties of the university participate. In 2020, he led the development and commencement of a unique joint master's degree program with University of Zimbabwe. He has facilitated the development of several short learning programs in the department. As a senior designate female South African who was also recruited into the department, she has taken up the position of head of department. Also, NGAP, NESP, assistant lecturers, DSI, and HSRC opportunities and secondments in the department have been occupied by female and designated candidates. Professor Gumbo is currently the leader of the Sustainable and Smart Cities and Regions Research, where he supervises several master's and PhD students. In terms of research, Professor Gumbo has a Google Scholar H index of 16, and he has over 710 citations. He has published at least 40 journal articles, authored 3 books, 15 book chapters, and over 100 peer-reviewed conference proceedings and 5 policy briefs. He has supervised over 50 masters to completion and over 10 PhDs to completion, of which others have submitted their examinations. Currently, Prof Gumbo has also supervised 4 postdoctoral research fellows, and he is currently supervising 2 of them. He is also currently supervising 10 master students and over 10 doctoral candidates. He has also managed to raise at least 5 million rands from the NRF, from the Volvo Research and Education Foundation, and from short learning programs and many other sources he has engaged. Prof Gumbo serves local and national government departments such as COCTA and SALGA, Council of Built Environment, in various capacities. He is a board member of the Journal of Inclusive Cities and serves in the International Conference on Infrastructure Development and Investment Strategies for Africa. Prof Gumbo reviewed urban and regional planning degree programs from several universities as a discipline expert and also as part of the SECPLAN accreditation teams. He has evaluated urban and regional planning programs for quality assurance and enhancement purposes. When I go sit down, you will be hearing from the man himself. You will be seeing those 10 doctoral students that he has produced. You'll be seeing what he has been teaching them and what he has been discussing with them. Welcome, Prof Gumbo.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor to be here, and thanks for coming. Yeah, I'm going to start by acknowledging the Vice Chancellor Functionary, the Chief Operating Officer, Dr. Kwati Ralipata. I also want to recognize the presence of the Executive Dean, and thanks for reading my abridged CV. My respondent, Prof. Manfred Schrank, who is joining virtually, my kids, and also my wife. I also have a nephew who traveled all the way from Zimbabwe, Mr. Tamdashe Moyo, and you can see quite a number of my former students, also current students. I was surprised to see Nish all the way from Devon. So I want to recognize the presence of all of you, but specifically let me mention and also express my gratitude to see my mentor. Thanks, Prof Trynos Gumbo, for gracing this occasion. I want also to acknowledge my head of department, Professor Trynos Gumbo, and all the esteemed colleagues from the department, my colleagues as well from the School of Civil Engineering and the Built Environment, also colleagues from the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment as well. As I indicated, yes, I value the presence of my former and current postgraduate students who have honestly in a way shaped my career. I'm here because of them, and I can mention those from UJ and other institutions since we started supervising from sister institutions. My former classmates as well who are here and also connecting virtually. Also, I need to recognize the teachers and lecturers who are here present, specifically from the University of Zimbabwe, where I did my undergrads. My former colleagues as well, where I served quite a number of organizations where I passed through when I was on my way to the University of Johannesburg. Also, my friends from all walks of life, I'd want to recognize them as they are connecting virtually. My presentation outline goes like, I'll start by setting the scene, then I'll share briefly my journey as an academic. I'll delve on the conceptual frameworks that we use in smart and sustainable cities, as well as theoretical frameworks that make it possible for us honestly to understand what we're studying and also researching on. I'll then share my scholarly publications. I'll go on to conclude, then appreciate all that have shaped my career, and then maybe just a few references. As part of the setting the scene, I'll share my motivation, what makes me keep going, and my point of departure of this inaugural lecture. Then I'll define a few terms that you see in the title. Then my argument, my claim, why I'm focusing on smart cities and sustainable cities and regions as well. Just as a proviso, which is a disclaimer, I acknowledge and value all world religions, but allow me to quote a biblical verse that has kept me going. It gives me the motivation as well to have or always define and shape the purpose of my life. And this is in Ecclesiastes 9 verse 10. Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might, for in the realm of the dead, where we're all going, there's neither waking nor planning, nor knowledge, nor wisdom. We always get chances to serve. So when we get such chances, we should do it with all our might, all our energy and wisdom. That's very, very important. Of course, besides the verse, I have role models. I also have cheerleaders who motivate me to keep going, even if the going is getting tough. I remember I mentioned my mentor, Prof Naidu. She has done a lot in my life, I think for the past, if not 6, around 7, 8 years. We've been working together, of course, from the Faculty of Humanities, but she's been holding my hand in FEBE, and I've been doing well because of her. So we have cheerleaders, we have also role models and mentors. As part of my conviction and the point of departure, I would say we have global interventions that are earmarked to transform lives in general, but specifically we'll try and develop smart and sustainable cities and regions. But however, these global interventions have been leading to some missed opportunities or missed targets. And these are the majority who are low-income people. Some would refer to them as the urban poor. So this is more evident in the global south, where the majority continue to suffer exclusions and are getting more poorer, hence they find solutions on their own. I'm sure you have heard that due to exclusion, due to high levels of poverty or abject poverty, the urban poor always try to find solutions to their problems. And I would say since time immemorial, humans have always provided solutions to their problems. But as we try and have modern systems that are well structured, we end up having I would say policies, regulatory frameworks and all that, that guide the development of, for example, I'm going to be talking about human settlements, I'm going to be talking about transport systems, I'm going also to be talking about employment opportunities, and I'm going to try and demonstrate why I'm focusing on these three, and they are very, very critical. So as they try to provide solutions to their problems, they end up having inadequate human settlements or inadequate housing. At the same time, they end up having poor and inefficient transport systems. They end up engaging in precarious employment opportunities because I would say governments at all levels would have failed them. So they try to say, we wouldn't in a way chicken out or go back to places of origin. As my former president said, and may his soul rest in peace, he said, no one was born in urban areas or in cities. We have a rural origin. And this was during the 2005 Murambachina, the famous one, or the infamous one. So we would say, even if we have the rural origins, but we always try to find solution in cities, although it will be very, very difficult to do so. So just to define a few terms, I just want to, in a way, try and maybe move at a pace where you'd appreciate what I mean or what I refer to as Global South. This is not a geographical term. It's not about the equator. However, you'll find that most of these countries are within the south of the equator, but there are so many that are on the other side of the equator in the north that are referred to as part of the Global South. So it generally refers to low or middle income countries that are in Africa, Asia, Oceania, Latin America, and the Caribbean that are characterized by low income, dense population, poor infrastructure, and often political cultural marginalization. As I indicated, we have some countries that are excluded as well in the south of the equator. For example, Israel, Japan, South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, they're not part of the Global South, although we find them on the south of the equator. And what is a sustainable city? So sustainable city is one that is planned, built, and managed to achieve environmental sustainability, social sustainability, and economic sustainability. For example, one would talk about the provision of infrastructure for walking, biking, and also public transport, public green spaces, smart waste removal, and it also promotes economic growth and meets the basic needs of its inhabitants while creating sustainable living conditions for all and does not compromise the ability of future generations to experience the same. So that's very, very important to say. As we try to develop these sustainable cities, we make sure that the present generation is enjoying whatever we're providing, and here we're talking about quality of life. But we wouldn't want to have a situation where we compromise the ability of the future generations to also enjoy the quality of life we're enjoying now. So that's a sustainable city. There's quite a lot that is involved there. A smart city also, in another way, optimizes city functions and promote economic growth while also improving the quality of life for citizens by using smart technologies and data analysis. So here we're bringing in the issue of now ICTs to try and assist as we develop the sustainable cities. Then they become smart because of the use of technology. Then my argument goes like the presence of weak, unclear institutions, etc., and on their absence. It could be the presence, but they are weak, or they are unclear, or they are not there at all. So I'm saying their absence as well has resulted in a culture of programs and projects failure, where agents as well are sometimes powerful and self-serving. So I'm saying when you're appointed as an agent by various institutions, sometimes that are not very strong or robust, then sometimes agents serve themselves or are very indifferent. So this has also given rise to poor governance of housing issues, which is a social component of the Sustainable Development Goals, urban public transport, which normally we categorize as part of the environmental aspect of the SDGs, then employment and business enterprises, an economic element, interventions that leave out the majority in cities of the Global South. So we have such interventions within or through our institutions, represented by agents, but in most cases, they leave out the majority in cities of the Global South. As I indicated, these are countries that we find on the south of the equator and also in the north, and some of them in the south of the equator are excluded. So it's all about the low levels of development and income. So institutions, in this case, in my talk, they are broadly defined as organizations, as well as rules and regulations that shape human interaction. So I'd want you to, as we travel together in this lecture, to get an understanding of what institutions are, and in this case, it's part of organizations, as well as the rules and regulations that shape how we interact. So it could be in institutions that we serve. Just briefly to share my journey as an academic before I get on and the main business of the day, I just wanted to also reiterate what my executive dean has just presented. I'm going to focus on 3 aspects, but quickly. This is the representation of my journey as I was doing my training as a planner. From the UZ, then 2 degrees, honors and masters, then Stellenbosch, then the PG dip that I recently completed. This is me graduating, the first one on the left there at Stellenbosch, then the other one is Rhodes. My professional development journey, as you've heard from the executive dean, 2004, started working at the University of Zimbabwe. Then I went to NAST in Bulawayo, which is, I think, the second biggest university, even in terms of establishment, but in terms of numbers, I think so many have come up now. Then 2008, I left Zimbabwe and went to Ethiopia, where I served briefly, but I was fortunate to get a scholarship. But then I quickly left, and so many people thought I was a bit inconsiderate because I'd been given an opportunity to serve as an expatriate in Ethiopia. I didn't even complete 2 years. Then I went to Stellenbosch to do my PhD. Thereafter, then I went back to UZ briefly to teach before I joined the ISA, Africa Institute of South Africa in Pretoria. And during those days, they were merging with HSRC. So I just served maybe for 2 months or so within the HSRC before joining the University of Johannesburg in 2014 as a senior lecturer and later HOD. Then associate professor 2018, then in 2022 full professor, and I'm still serving as full professor and leader of the Smart and Sustainable Cities and Regions Research Group. My journey of becoming a full professor, I'm going just to rush through because the dean has just talked about it, but I just wanted to share this story. It's a very critical story because you see as I keep on, in a way, engaging with you, that I believe that if they say it takes a village to raise a human being, I believe that it takes the whole world to raise a professor or to create or shape a professor. So I think being a leader in the department for 6 years helped me really to demonstrate that we have capacity and capabilities within the department and beyond, where we developed all these programs. I'm not trying to market our programs, but if you feel like you want to come, you are free to come and register and complete these programs with us. And 2 of them are fully accredited by SACPLAN. The Bachelor of Urban Regional Planning 3-year degree, then the Bachelor Honors degree in Urban Regional Planning, then the Interdisciplinary Masters, as my Executive Dean indicated. Then we also have a Masters by Research. Then we have a PhD as well. Then a joint Masters with the University of Zimbabwe. But we have quite a number of SLPs as well with other universities, for example, Tampere University in Finland, and we are developing one with partners from 4 universities, and it's going to be launched from next year. So we have quite a number of programs. Then we also engaged in staff and student development. It was massive. I can mention the intern. Yeah, my executive dean mentioned DSI, HSRC intern, and we were blessed that she's here. She traveled all the way from Devon, and she's going, for on information, she's going also to attend an inaugural graduation tomorrow. Is it in Boxbeck? Kiara is here. Thanks for that. I think we proved as a department that we can get interns from system institutions and do justice, because she graduated with a distinction in 1 year. So she has a master's, now registered for a PhD at DUT. So we also have brilliant programs where we celebrate the achievement of our students, and they've been getting these prizes, and it motivates them to keep going and doing much better and better. So you can see staff members at the top there. That's Natasha, the secretary, and quite a number of students there. In terms of space development, excursions, and alumni, we also want to appreciate the university for supporting. We've done so well as a department, and thanks for having confidence in me to lead then. As I indicated now, we have a capable female leader in Prof Trynos Gumbo, who is pushing and taking the department to greater heights. But these are the things that we managed to achieve for us also to get the full accreditation for our programs. So you can see our students are also very active in terms of, I would say, outreach programs where they even engage the communities. The Vice Chancellor functionary, Dr. Alipata, also mentioned the issue of societal impact. So our students are also assisting the department and the leadership to make sure that we reach out to society and community. Then as part of my teaching philosophy, this is something that I value, and I always try to reflect in this theory that I use. It's a framework where I say I use the hybrid transformative teaching philosophy that brings together the social realism theory and a variety of teaching philosophies, and we target the content that we teach our students, and we make sure that we connect and we co-create knowledge with our students. Very, very critical. I wish I would have more time to talk about this. I could spend the whole day talking about this framework. It helps me, honestly, to engage with students and fellow staff and all that. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk more about it. So in terms of postgraduate supervision and PDRIFs, we have, as also the executive indicated, you can see some photos there, brilliant photos of our students graduating, and also we have Dr. Onia, the PDRIF, who is here with us. So we've had so many students passing through our department, graduating, and honestly pushing the agenda for human capital development, which is very, very critical. I'm sure, Nish, you can see yourselves. So in terms of research publications profile, as the executive dean indicated, I've deliberately planned my career to say I need to publish a book every year since 2020, and I thank God it's working. And we have a book with my PDRF that is almost done now for 2023. So since 2020, we have been doing our level best in terms of research publications. And in terms of funding and internationalization, you can see there, that's my, I think, the top there, number 2 from the left. That's my former department, the alma mater, the University of Zimbabwe. I'm sure we have some staff members who are on this photo here. And I can also pick the one below there, the photo below there is for the SASUF. Those are our colleagues from Sweden when we're attending the SASUF workshop this year and the University of Western Cape. So this is part of internationalization in terms of funding. The Volvo Research Education Foundation has been very generous, as well as the NRF. I'll get a chance to appreciate them. In terms of community engagement development, we've also done so well. I deliberately brought the CEO and registrar of SACPLAN, who is here gracing us. The top photo there, I'm sure you remember it, I think that was UKZN. So we really engage communities and ensure that really we make some impact in the industry. All right, as I indicated, I'm now getting to the main focus of my talk. We have concepts that we use as we study and research on smart and sustainable cities and regions, and I'm going to briefly talk about them. You'd realize that in 2015, we had the Agenda for Sustainable Development, which is very critical. And things I remember, I saw Professor Namo as well. He's one guy really who took me through this when we were discussing SDGs and all that. So the Agenda for Sustainable Development is very, very critical, where they adopted 17 SDGs or 169 targets. And the main focus was on 3 pillars, which is the environment, the social, and the economic pillar. In 2016, a year after, then they adopted the new urban agenda, and this was related more to housing and sustainable urban development. It stressed the need to rethink the way cities, towns, and villages are planned and managed to fulfill their role as drivers of sustainable development. So I was saying, I'm sure you've heard that the future, even of Africa, is urban, and cities will always be engines of development. So the new urban agenda of 2016 tried to stress that as a follow-up to the Agenda for Sustainable Development, very critical. The other aspect that they emphasized is the collaborative pursuit of efforts by all committed partners, relevant stakeholders, and urban actors of all levels of government. In South Africa, we have 3. In other countries, there are 2, where at some point they just talk about the national and the local government. But fortunately, in South Africa, there's also the provincial that makes 3 levels, as well as civil society. That is very, very critical. Sometimes it helps really as an exchequer say what's happening within national government, provincial government, and local government as well. And we may not leave the private sector as well. That comes in with the efficiency and sometimes the funding and all that. But it's very, very important to say the 17 goals were sort of, I'd say, arranged or packaged around the 5 Ps. And the most important P is the people themselves. Because if you check goal number 1, it's all about poverty. Then the 2, they're talking about, the second one, they talk about hunger and all that, all that. So people must be at the center of the SDGs, followed by the planet. Of course, we need to preserve the environment. And prosperity, yes, we can't just be taking care of those who are in need without generating the much needed wealth. So the wealth is very, very important. But surprisingly, I like the way the Vice Chancellor Functional was talking about, are there any connections? Are there any missing links and all that? You realize that, to me, I would say the partnership and peace that came on number 16 and 17 came as an afterthought, because if you look at it, and this is going to be the main message that I'm sending today, you realize that when it comes to institutions, there isn't much that is, in a way, presented in the SDGs. 16, 17, that's when they come and say, let's have partnership, let's have peace. But all the 15, it's all about people, it's all about environment, it's all about this, the economy. But not to say they are not important, but how do we go about achieving these 3? I'm going to try and delve on that. All right, the other aspect really that I picked as I was preparing the lecture and also as I do my research is to say, if they are saying it's a new urban agenda, how new? That's the question. To what extent is it new in 2016? When we go back to 1976, when we had the first habitats, they also identified the need to eradicate poverty. Excuse me. And after every 20 years, they always have these meetings. In 1996, again, there was a meeting to discuss the same things. And if you would want to go back to 1948, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, there was that recognition to say we need really to serve the people. This is 3 years, for your own information, after the Second World War, 1945. They are saying, let's get to business, let's serve the people, let's eradicate all the challenges. But you realize that even then, quite a number of these countries that are in the global south, they struggled to get independence. From 1948, I think the recent country to be free, I think if you look at it, it's very, very recent. But 1948, what were they doing? Not even volunteering, just to free these colonies. So you realize that if I look at it, the new urban agenda, I look at it and question it. To what extent is it new? What new aspects is it bringing? And even the SDGs, as I indicated, brilliant, but there are some missing links that are there, and I'm going to demonstrate. Why should we be worried? You would realize that in the global south, we're already drowning. As we're drowning in very low water levels because of the adversarial urbanization in the region. So it means as the water levels keep rising, then life is going to be very difficult for almost everyone. And I would say the time is now to try and act, because if we're honestly having this situation of low urbanization levels compared to the other world or compared to other countries, but with so many challenges. We have so many challenges. I would give an example of, just to maybe bring you closer to what I'm saying. If you, in Southern Africa, if you look at it, I think it's South Africa that is the highest levels. I'm not talking about rates, levels. I think it's around 68% now. People are urbanized. But go to Malawi, I think it's around 17% or 20% thereabout. Zimbabwe, I think around 32%. You go to Kenya, where we have the famous or infamous informal settlements, the level of urbanization is very low. So imagine if you are at 25% urbanization, you are urbanized 25%. You say 75% of the people, the population, are still in the rural areas. What if they come to the urban areas? What will happen? When we have informal settlements with just 25% of the population in the urban areas, and we're struggling to deal with informal settlements, that's something really that should make us get worried. So I was saying most urban population growth is taking place in cities of the global south. Unfortunately, urban population is not supported by the proportionate growth of economies, like what happened in the I would say, developed countries. Remember, they struggled during the early, I would say, 20th century, but after some time, especially it coincided with the end of Second World War, and the economy started booming, and you'd realize that as people come in cities, the economy is also growing, which is the opposite. We still have more and more people in our cities, but I think I would say it's some kind of a negative correlation. As the population is increasing, the economy is going down. So the incidence of poverty as a result is rising as the population rises in cities of the global south. So this, in a way, is a cause for concern, and we need to be worried. And as indicated, I think in Africa, we still have maybe less than 50% people living in urban areas. And if they say we have rising urbanization rates, where more than 40% will join the urban areas by 2050, then we need to stop and think about it. How are we going to resolve these issues? If more and more people are going to join, and we are struggling with just less than 50%, as I indicated, yes, South Africa is leading, but it has its own challenges. But if, for example, in Zimbabwe, where we have 32%, imagine 30% come in the cities in the next, I would say, 27 years, then it's something really to worry. Just to explain smart cities and regions development, as I indicated briefly, this is the use of technologies where we have, at the end of the day, digital cities, intelligent cities, or future cities that makes life easier through the efficient adoption and utilization of technologies. So it's very, very important, and I know UJ has always been driving the fourth industrial revolution, and would need really to make sure that it assists us to achieve smart cities in the country and beyond, since South Africa is part of the BRICS, and we know that whatever is happening in South Africa can be sort of, in a way, be replicated in other countries in the African continent. So I'm saying we need to really take advantage of the fourth industrial revolution, and as the university were driving it. So if we can make use of the big data and analytics and system integration, the Internet of Things, cybersecurity, then life could be better in our cities. The relevant theories, I'm just going to talk to just 2 theories, but there are so many. For example, one can talk about the decolonial theory, right to the city and all that, but let me just talk to systems theory, because this is very much relevant to the development of smart cities, where we are saying, for example, as we are building new roads, we may use technology to get to know how we can reduce the pressure on our roads and increase the road capacity and even reduce travel time, which is very, very important. So we would say a city operates as a system. We even talk about urban metabolism. And within that city, we also have subsystems. There are so many subsystems within a city. For example, we can talk about the water system, we can talk about the energy system, and all that. So systems theory assists us to get to focus on the different parts of a system and how they connect, and assist us to have working systems as a whole. And as I indicated, just like human beings, cities also breathe through the urban metabolism. Then they also, in a way, produce waste. At the end of the day, we have to make sure that we deal with waste in a very, I would say, efficient way. And one important theory that I would want to talk to is the principal agent framework that is normally used, I think, in development projects by the non-governmental organizations, but it's also applicable in the public sector. This is very, very important to say we have a principal, we engage someone on their behalf to do the task, but as they perform the task, there are always issues of self-interest on both sides, but the agent must serve the principal. That's very, very important. That's very, very important. However, you realize that there are costs as well of the principal as they try to ensure that the agent deliver. So if the agent doesn't deliver in some contracts, real estate, and I can see Madam Mjakaj there, in real estate, the example that I'm going to use, you can easily go back to the maybe lease agreement or to the contract that you'll be having and sue them or demand that they deliver. But in most cases, government works with agents to reach out to the urban poor to make sure that they get the service that they need. And in most cases, we realize that the government at all levels maybe doesn't have enough information or capacity even to follow through and make sure that they hold them accountable, these agents, to make sure that they deliver to the urban poor. And this is a very, very critical framework that I'm going to, in a way, talk to and say, can we reimagine how we do things when it comes to these contracts or relationships? So as I indicated, it's much better when it comes to the real estate industry, where we have the principal. In this case, it could be the owner of the house. Then they engage the agent who is going to manage the house on behalf of the owner. Then we have the person who is going to rent. So as they rent, they may have direct contact, or they may have some information from the principal, and they can resolve issues much better than a situation where you just have the principal and the agent without the third person. For example, in this case, if it's a community project, we need to talk about the people who are supposed to be served. They need really to have some kind of, I would say, connection with the principal. So that's my take there. So now going to the research outputs that we've been doing all along, as we're applying or implementing or getting some kind of insights from these concepts, as well as the various theories to try and shape and inform how we do business. As I indicated in passing, I say we have a co-authored book. This was co-authored with a postdoc and a colleague in the school. And we managed really to have also several book chapters, journal articles that speak to housing, which is the main aspect that I've been talking to, and as also spelled out in the New Urban Agenda of 2016 to say housing is very critical. Once you provide, then you'll be solving so many problems. One of the outputs tries to make reference to the location. How do we go about locating housing as we create sustainable cities? And this paper highlights the behaviors of ticking the boxes in most cases, in line with the policies that will be existing. And however, they don't produce the equitable, inclusive and neighborhoods and the urban spatial patterns that would expect or that are desired. However, they reproduce the spatial inequalities of the past. We also realize that human settlement, separatist planning and development practices are still not over, but they are seen, or they are ubiquitous. They are seen all over. And I took this statement from the learned Dr. Makoni recently when we were having our PhD writing retreat. So you realize that as we engage in these projects, the idea in most cases, even if the policies are existing, is just to tick the boxes. There is no, I would say, motivation really to resolve issues in all earnest, ensure that we provide adequate housing. In this case, I mean adequate in terms of numbers and adequate in terms of quality, where you use the right materials to ensure that really people get protected from the elements of weather. If these policies are to result in really spatial change and improvement in the lives of Johannesburg residents, for example, a more proactive approach by the public sector at different levels would be necessary. Remember, I was talking about governments at different levels, and sometimes they just produce these policies and they engage the private sector to try and reach out to the urban poor, but in most cases, we're saying they miss the targets in terms of numbers, in terms of quality of the products. We also published a paper on housing as an economic asset, and we realized that housing location is a key determinant of rental prices, and if you don't locate housing units appropriately, then you will be, in a way, shortchanging the masses. For example, the RDPs, people would want, honestly, to get some income through rental. They can share. And this implies an avoidable loss of rent to the owner of the property who compromises some of these aspects. Very, very important. So the implications on public authorities that a lower rent may have a negative implication on government revenue, and specifically property tax, which is normally based on market rent of a property. Another publication on housing relates to how government could support low-income people's capabilities. As I indicated, since time immemorial, humans have always tried to get solutions to their problems. So sometimes what government could do is just to provide an enabling environment and not to directly provide housing to the people. So allocating, for example, secure land, well located and serviced, could assist the urban poor as they try to pool their resources to provide housing for themselves. But they need to be met halfway. If we can meet them halfway in terms of infrastructure provision, pulling the land together, and make sure that that land is appropriately located and not placing them in the periphery, it becomes maybe a process or an act of just ticking the boxes, as we indicated. So here we wrote about the architecture that works in housing the urban poor in developing countries, and here we'll be referring to the Global South. We moved on to economic activities, as indicated, housing, which is one of the pillars and it's part of the social pillar of the SDGs. Then economic activities, which is another pillar of the SDGs. We're looking at urban informality in South Africa and Zimbabwe. And very interesting findings from that. But we also have several journal articles that we published. And we're saying, how can you support the linkages of formal and informal economic activities, particularly the backward and forward linkages that can support the informal businesses, and at the same time, they benefit the formal businesses. Very interesting to say there are strong linkages that you'd realize if you deliberately locate informal businesses. I'm sure you have heard that some statements to say within that disorder that we see on a daily basis in our informal businesses, there is order. They would know where they start, they will know where they end. They know how they should go about, and they even have their associations. So if they are already grassroots, I'll say initiatives to have some semblance of order within these informal businesses, why can't then the other parties come to the, in a way, rescue and support of these informal economic entrepreneurs? That's very, very, very important. Another publication looked at locating as well how you can promote incomes. The paper presents, it used the geographic information data that we collected by means of GPS, and we managed to demonstrate the importance of spatiality and location of informal businesses. And this was published in Elsevier, that's in brief. It was all about demonstrating different methodologies of collecting data, which is very, very important. You may realize why we're suffering, why we're having all these issues, because we don't have the correct updated data and all that. So sometimes we can use other methods of collecting data and they work. And especially now as we talk about the fourth industrial revolution, as ICTs, and we have, I'm sure in the school we have a center, Karenbi. I remember the executive dean reading about my participation in Karenbi, and the director, I'm sure Prof Sonda is around. One could use a drone to collect data. One could use sensors to collect data, all that. So there's need to showcase the different ways of collecting data that can help us, because that's one huge weakness we have, particularly in developing countries or the global south. Our data is not up to date, and it's very scant. It's also fine white and all that. Then we also have another one that looks at the nature of economic informality. And this is a chapter that looks at, for example, one would say, do these informal entrepreneurs really want to be informal or to be on the wrong side of the law, or they are forced by circumstances? And how best can we bring them closer to abiding, closer to observing the laws of the land, be it municipal laws and all that, bylaws and all that. Very, very important. And we realize that informal entrepreneurs are willing to observe some of these laws, because you realize that when they are encouraged to register their business, they do register. When they are encouraged to operate from a designated space, they do that. They don't keep moving from one place to the next. They may find it very difficult maybe to pay, I would say, the salaries at that level that they are expected to pay, or maybe to observe working hours. But most of these municipal bylaws, they would observe, they would register, they would operate from a designated space and all that, all that. So we're saying the deviation, transgression, or digression, what is happening exactly in the urban informal economy? Are they deliberately just, in a way, choosing to operate on the other side of the law? And we realize that's not true. An interesting book that we published recently with my students, which is a co-created output, focuses on urban public transport systems innovation in the fourth industrial revolution era. This was a very exciting project where really we learned a lot from each other with my students. All these are students. The supervisor there, and they did well. Of course, some were co-supervised with my colleagues, for example, Prof Msakwa, supervising Dr. Tembani Moyo now, who has graduated and serving in Karimbi as a PDRF. And we have also top students here who are serving in the South African entities. For example, Sandrande, who is now a manager in SACPLAN, Brightness Smarty, who is an NGAP in University of Venda, Spiro Mbata, who is completing his PhD. Very interesting project where we learned a lot together, and also the insights that we got from the book, sort of honestly eye-opening. Then the integration of public transport systems and how they can improve mobility. Very important publication there to say how can we have public transport systems that are integrated spatially. For example, as you move from one mode to the next, you wouldn't want to travel long distances. I remember when I was talking to my friend at some point, saying how train beautiful and nice and all that, but if you'd want to, for example, use it from maybe the north, then you are working in Doornfontein campus, you drop off at Park Station, how do you navigate and find yourself at Doornfontein with all those hazards, I would say, concerns along the, even if it's short distance, but anything can happen between Park Station and Doornfontein campus. So you would need to have this HAL bus, but is it there? It's not there. You would need to have a well-connected rear via bus, but is it there? It's not there. So you find it very difficult. So you would need to make sure that our transport systems, our public transport systems, are well connected, and one doesn't need to travel more than, I would say, 50 meters to connect. One other publication is on managing traffic congestion. How best could we manage traffic congestion? And the results as well were far-reaching and eye-opening. The other one is all about informal public transport operations, very, very critical, to say how can we support informal public transport operations, because it's a reality. And you have had maybe statistics to say the taxi industry moves more than 70% of our residents in Johannesburg. So it's something that really we need to look into. How can we make sure that we make them safe and secure, and people would want to use taxis? Of course, it speaks to engaging. We need to engage them, and how do we go about engaging them? Then one is on the role of institutions in developing smart transport systems. Very, very critical, since I indicated that I'm trying to look into the SDGs and say the focus is more on the economy, the focus is more on the environment and the people as well. But to say, how do you get to the people? How do you develop the economy? How do you get to preserve the environment? So the questions on what is clear, the questions on why is clear, and the questions on when is very clear, because I say by 2030 we should have achieved A, B, C, X, Y, Z. But how do you go about it? So the institutions are missing. So this was a very emotional book chapter we wrote with Prof Msakwa, my colleague and friend for more than 2 decades. So we realized that in as much as the policies are there, and as much as the legislative frameworks are there, but you may find that they are very weak. So there are challenges of weak policy formulations and implementation strategies at both national and provincial levels, as well as a deep culture that prefers private automobile to public transport. Therefore, there's need to improve transportation policy and promote evidence-based transportation, I would say, rules, regulations, and all that. So a very interesting research output. Just briefly to speak to the focus areas of our postgraduate students. There's a lot, for example, on housing, where they some focus on build-to-rent, social housing projects, land ownership, approaches, strategies of upgrading former settlements, urban resilience in the face of urban change as we try to improve our human settlements, issues of skills. We need skills in the construction sector, where we try and come up with these units, and tax incentives as well to achieving inner city renewal, very critical. functions of public spaces as well in gated communities, gentrification, displacement, very, very critical, sustainable urban tools as well in trying to deal with homelessness. Then on economic, we have postgraduate students who are focusing on how can we unlock Kasi wealth and transform the spatial planning and local economic development. This is very, very important. And our women, how can we make them participate in development projects? And as we develop these growth centers and all that, how can we go about it to ensure that we develop them in a very sustainable way, economically? Then issues of spatial and socio-economic transformation nexus are very, very critical. Then in terms of transportation focus areas by our students, there's a lot that is involved. There's a lot that is interesting there. So they involve themselves in location-based services, the impact of public transport systems on socio-economic transformation, public-private sector transport, co-usage of infrastructure. How do we delineate spatial integration of urban public transport systems, and also the electronic intermodality and interoperability of innovative urban public transport systems, very, very important. And non-motorized transport is very, very critical. We've been talking about walking, biking, and it's becoming very common in other sections. For example, if you go to the developed world, there are some countries that are known as bike cities, and some they are known for walking. I'm sure I've seen quite a number of our partners would come to DFC, they try to walk, they try to cycle. Within 2-3 months, they give up. So it means something is not right. Also, bus rapid transit systems, very, very important in how they can serve the poor, especially meeting their needs. So the main message that I'm trying to send home is to say, if you look closely at the SDGs, yes, they are beautiful, and they point to the intersection of housing and I would say initiatives to generate income and also issues of mobility. Why housing? Because if you look at housing, for example, you would realize that if you have adequate housing in terms of numbers, in terms of quality, it means it must be well located, number one. Number two, that housing should have, and I'm sure even the terminology has changed in South Africa, say not just housing, it must be human settlements. So they should have social amenities. So they should have running water, they should have power, they should have also issues of sanitation. They should be able to, because we generate waste on a daily basis, and should be able to be, for example, one can start by separating, then they get to collect, they transport it, they dispose it. And these days also, because we're talking about green cities, issues of sustainability, then instead of dump sites, we're talking of well-designed places where you can even generate energy. So it's very, very important. The moment we talk about adequate housing, it means one should think of the location itself. One must think of the structure itself in terms of materials. Are they using the right materials? Then also, do we have electricity, the energy? Do we have running water? Do we have sanitation? It's very, very critical. So the moment you try and solve housing issues and provide adequate housing, you would have solved so many issues. Then if that housing scheme, for example, is well located, it means people are closer to sources of income. They can find themselves generating income easily without struggling, for example, to move from all the way to Mabopane there to come to City of Tshwane. It's a long distance, especially amidst the trains, the public trains that are not longer there. Just think of it. I've seen people who wake up at 4 a.m. To come to campus DFC, all the way from, is it Sediveng there? It's a nightmare, if you think of it. So the moment you have housing in Sediveng and someone is trying to make a living in Johannesburg, then it's a mammoth task, because income issues, they come into the picture, then mobility as well. So I'm trying to say the moment we think around these three issues and they are adequate for the poor, then we have the acronym HIM. I'm not trying to be gender insensitive. But I'm just saying, if you look at it, say, home, income, and mobility nexus, then you are trying to reach the urban poor. And in the process, you can have sustainable cities. In the process, you can bring in the necessary technologies, even as you do mobility with the tech industry. Already, they are making efforts to have some technological applications. For example, in Cape Town, they even have an app where you get to know who is next. So instead of just parking your taxi in the rank, you would know that if I go next door, just next street, then I'll be able to pick 2 or 3 people, then my taxi is full. There's quite a lot, even in terms of payment in the taxi industry as well. There are also these applications of technology. So I want to believe that it is feasible and attainable to devise and execute appropriate solutions to the problems of the poor in cities and regions of the African, Latin American, Asian continents, and all that. Particularly social, economic, environmental, and in this case I'm referring to spatial, programs and projects must be sensitive and responsive to the needs of the majority low-income people. So here we're talking about well-located, decent housing with water access, electricity, sanitation, durable materials as well, reasonable sizes, because we need really to be cognizant of the size as well. We're not saying it shouldn't be too big. We always travel to Europe. Those guys don't have big houses. It's reasonable. They can do whatever they want, but if they need outdoor lives, there are always these green spaces, there are always play areas. Anything that you need, it's public. So, but in a situation where you don't even have a park for kids to play, then one would need a big house, 15-roomed, 20-roomed house. But how many would have those 20-roomed houses? How many? That's where we have inequalities. How many can afford the 20-room? And in some instances, you find that behind that 20-roomed house, they even have a tennis court. The moment you take all that area, it means you are depriving others. So we're saying, if we can have reasonably sized and located housing, then you're fine, and there's running water, there's energy, there's sanitation and all that. We don't need big ones. At the end of the day, once you do that, you have improved connectivity, and in the process, you reduce transport cost and time. Honestly, I'm sure there are some people who spend around 8 or 9 hours at work. To come to work, they spend 4 hours. To go back home, they spend 4 hours. That's a nightmare. That's a nightmare. So as long as you have adequate housing, then it's well connected, then you have better access to income-generating activities and productivity. Then we'll be saying we are working towards sustainable cities for the majority. All right, let me just take you to Singapore. Maybe, it may appear as if maybe I'm just talking about things that are not possible. Thanks, my executive dean, I'm finishing. You'd realize that when it was British colonial rule in Singapore, they had an attitude and belief that housing challenges would just go away. They would just disappear as the economy grew. There was no action at all. They would just know it just happens. But however, post-colonial rule, housing was regarded now as a human right, and now they managed to implement effective policies, or I would say institutions. So there are organizations, there are rules and regulations that are geared towards, in a way, achieving housing for all, or for the majority, where it's corruption-free. Of course, it was centralized. People can debate, say, do we really need to centralize it? But they reached, they managed to provide housing for the majority, about 80%, and stimulate the economy. And we also do it here in Johannesburg, the transit-oriented development, but one could anyway argue to what extent has it tried to stimulate the economy and all that. But they made sure that these neighborhoods are well connected, and I would say also there was active transportation where they could anyway cycle and all that. Another example is an interesting one, the French case where they are currently developing what they call the Grand Paris Express. You can just Google it and check, very interesting, where they're integrating home, income, and mobility. And this is a massive and ambitious project where they invested, I think, more than 45 billion euro, and they are honestly, in a way, reaching out almost everyone, especially the poor neighborhoods, because this is 200 kilometers long, same length with what is currently existing. So the need for agent action amidst weak institutions and indifferent agents. Remember I talked about the principal agent framework. The principal agent framework works where institutions work. So we would want a situation where we have the inadequate housing currently in terms of location far away, the water, there isn't, sanitation issues, structural quality issues as well, then far away and they are engaged in precarious informal employment opportunities, then transport issues as well, as I indicated, issues of time and money, and the poor are really struggling. Then we would need really to strengthen the home income mobility interconnections, very, very important. And we can only do that if we have strong, adaptable, and responsive institutions. And by institutions, I mean structures, I mean also the rules and regulations and all that, where we have, at the end of the day, adequate and secure housing, decent and reliable income, affordable and safe mobility. So I'm saying in the SDGs, I always talk to my students and say, let's look at institutions and see how best they can serve the people. And the SDGs, on that day, 2015, the UN General Assembly missed the institutions. And these are very, very critical. When I was talking to the project managers in France in March, when we toured the Grand Paris Express, they seem not to be worried about institutions, issues of corruption, they are fine. They're saying they're engaging so many contractors, things are flowing, but I don't think you'd imagine having 45 billion euro in the global south, just leave it. You just engage contracts anyhow. These contractors say, do it. So I asked them, how do you, because now there are 60 contractors, how do you manage them? How do you ensure that they deliver? Because it's about, I think, 68 stations that they're building, 200 kilometers of transit and rail and all that. So it's really worrying when it comes to the global south. I'm sure the UN General Assembly 2015 then never thought about the global south and how institutions perform. So I'll say if we could have the principal, agent, and the owner, and we have institutions that are strong at the center to make sure that things get delivered as they are supposed, because we can have documents that are gathering dust and they're not being referred to. If they refer to them, they just tick boxes. So I'm saying sustainable cities at the center, the government, what is government doing in terms of regulatory framework and follow up? How about the private sector? Yes, we need it. It's efficiencies. Then civil society, and within that we have the community as well. Then lastly, I would want really to try and create this framework for smart and sustainable development, where we have the structures, and these represent the various components such as programs, policies, rules, regulations, which have a huge bearing in the creation of smart and sustainable cities. But culture matters. For example, one would say, what is the culture of the UJ as an institution? How about the agents that are appointed by UJ? Are you serving the people? That's the question. Because the institution can have the policies. We can have the structures, the committees. How are the committees serving the people? As an agent, how are you serving the people? Very, very important, because culture comes in play. So we need really to think about these frameworks, not just to say money is there, institutions are there, then we have an agent and people are serving the masses as they are supposed to do. We really need to look into our institutions and make them strong, because I would say, in as much as we need strong agents, but they mustn't be stronger than institutions. Institutions must be able to self-correct. I was watching TV yesterday, the public protector already saying we need to change something. And they realized that the public protector as an office is not strong. It's an individual who is strong. You get the point? So if a strong individual comes and goes, what happens? A weak one comes in, then all the fissures come out in the open. So do we have strong institutions? Are they self-correcting? That's very, very important. So institutions matter, but we need capable people who are honest, who deliver and all that. But even if they go and someone comes in, institutions will be able to expose them because it's a strong institution that is working. So looking ahead and ongoing and future research, we need really, I hope, with the support of my HOD, Prof Trynos Gumbo, staff members in the department, and the Dean himself and colleagues, then we'll be able to transform the group into a center. Then also concerted efforts will be made to contribute to the role of governance and institutions, smart and sustainable cities and regions. Also our postgraduate students, they'll be focusing on the 3 related issues of home, income and generating, home income generating activities, transportation issues for low-income people in cities of the Global South. Then we'll continue to contribute and shape the current and future research in the intersections or interconnections of the components, but at the center of all these three components will be institutions. We're not going to talk about peace and partnership on number 16 or 17, when we've started by talking about 1 to 15 other things. So institutions matter. Without institutions, we won't in a way do much. Local international collaborations as well in research projects will also support research on intersections among the home, income, and mobility in cities of the Global South. More specifically, the application of fourth industrial revolution systems and research will be intensified. Among the technologies will be the use of machine learning. Already we have a student who is focusing on how we could use machine learning to locate our housing appropriately. Very, very important PhD study. Then also improve and strengthen both spatial and electronic integration of transport systems. Of course, non-motorized transports are very, very critical. These photos, they show our postgraduate students and our staff members, colleagues, and also our international partners. And my HOD there, we've been discussing all this the past 2 weeks in terms of postgraduate studies. They need really to push and finish in record time. We shouldn't be those agents who enroll students, keep them in the system. They become professional students. Then conclusion, institutions and agents through their rigid and retrogressive, corrupt, and indifferent culture have failed the poor. This is very, very important. We have institutions and the agency who, in a way, occupy positions in these institutions and continue to fail the poor. And sometimes we need to question ourselves, are we there to serve, and are we serving? Then in the quest to resolve unemployment, poverty, inequality, and inefficient transport system, and to achieve smart and sustainable cities, there's need for efforts by agents that implement inclusive, resilient, sustainable urban development policies and regulatory frameworks. Such institutions and agents must prioritize decent, durable, well-located housing that has access to all basic services such as electricity, water, and sanitation. The homes must be well connected to affordable, appropriate, and efficient transportation. And the homes must be well integrated and accessible to economic opportunities and income-generating activities. There's need for efforts that improve targeting of the majority low-income people. Targeting is very, very important. Let's not miss the target. There's need for agents to reimagine the whole processes, strategies, and to infuse institutional approaches and theories holistically within the sustainable development discourse. Only that way will interventions be appropriate for the majority low-income people, thus leading to inclusive smartness and sustainability of cities and regions in the Global South. I think that's the end of my executive day. Maybe if I can just allow me just to appreciate, thank you very much. It takes the world to create a professor. I'm grateful to the following for shaping my career. The University of Johannesburg itself, I would say, let me just confess, this is the longest time I've served in an organization. So not to say I hope from whenever, but thank you for the opportunity. It means it's a good home. So I think I'm getting to 10 years at UJ, which is huge. It's a milestone. I need the certificate, executive dean. All right, the Faculty of Engineering, the Built Environment, past and present deans and vice deans. I'm sure, honestly, Prof Mashao has done a lot. He promoted me. Then also Prof Sina did a lot. Prof Mboa, then Prof Dundu. So many people really did a lot in my life. Specifically, I want to thank my wife. She knows that I'm a 3-minute person when it comes to responding. So I'm always on my laptop and on that. Yeah, you're busy with the laptop. But she's very patient. Then the kids as well. My mother, my sister, all my relatives, like I indicated, we have a cousin who's here. Then the head of department, Prof Mpambukeli, the staff members, we have brilliant staff members in the department. To mention them from Natasha, the secretary, the technician, Mzove, these lecturers, and the former HOD who passed on the baton, Dr. Onatu, brilliant, Mr. Okra, Dr. Makoni, Mr. Mbinza, brilliant people in the department. I hope I didn't leave any, but I have a brilliant young man by the name Orchid Pretorius, and former colleagues as well. Nish, I saw Nish here, very brilliant. They pushed. Then the school itself of civil engineering, my head of school himself, Professor Mahachi, and all the staff members were always having our school research committee. We shape each other and all that. So from the 4 different departments in the school, very critical. Then Faculty of Engineering colleagues, I sit in the FHDC, they always shape me as well. Former and current postgraduate students, I saw Bonolo, quite a number of them here. I won't be able to mention all of them, but she's still continuing, not former, but she graduated with masters, BTech and all that. Then my former classmates that indicated, teachers, I have lecturers from the University of Zimbabwe here, and all that. So I need really to appreciate you guys, you shaped us. And then my colleagues, I served with, for example, in the SSRC, then also the Ethiopian Safe College in Addis Ababa, then also Stellenbosch. I really want to appreciate their input in shaping me. Then international research partners from China, Australia, Sweden, Finland, Tanzania. And also, in terms of funding, the Evolve for Research Education Foundation, National Research Foundation as well, my friends, and my mentor, Prof Naidu. Because I was part of the, let me mention it, AMP. AMP is very, very critical. Maybe if there's no one who has appreciated it, let me appreciate the AMP. I'm a product of AMP. That's Accelerated Academic Mentorship Program. Thanks, Prof. And the mentor was Prof Naidu, who is here. Thank you very much.
Hello from Austria. It's an incredible pleasure and honor to be part of this activity that we have now and this inauguration of Professor Trynos Gumbo. We know each other for some years now, quite a time, I would say. What I can contribute is to say he's a fantastic academic. He's a wonderful presenter. But what is more than that is that he is really promoting his students and a whole academic family from South Africa and bringing them to the international stage. I think that's his major achievement. So it's on the one hand his own professional work. On the other hand, it's he's a big promoter. He's just a promoter, a networker, a great guy, strong, and that's basically already my speech for it. I'm very happy, and I'm sure, and the university can be happy to have him. He's a big win for the university, I'm sure, and I hope he will continue for many years with his own work on the one hand, but also with his networking activities and with helping young people to start their careers and bringing them on the stage and making it possible for them to not only know the local conditions, but also know the international conditions. It's always fantastic to see Trynos at conferences. He's a fantastic member of the program committee. He's a fantastic member of the reviewer team. And he is a moderator, and he is a great presenter. That's it already from me. Greetings from Austria.
And I can see that. Congratulations, Professor Gumbo.
Thank you, CEO.
And our honored guests tonight, thank you for making this occasion such a lovely occasion. I'm sure you will not forget it soon. Mrs. Gumbo, congratulations to you. We're not mentioning you at all, but we know. We know. Congratulations. We have come to the end of our formal proceedings. Thank you very much. You are all invited to go to the lounge area where there are some refreshments, and please enjoy the evening with us further. Thank you very much.
The University of Johannesburg, the future reimagined.